Evening, everyone. It's really good to have you all joining us tonight for the launch of Welcome Homes, which we're really excited to tell you more about this evening. We're sorry that we can't see you, but congratulations, you get to see us. But we really would love for you to still feel a part of this evening, to hear where you've come from. So please do write in the chat where you're joining in from tonight, so that we can see that. And do write any questions that you have throughout the evening in the chat as well, that we can respond to those and connect with you that way as well. My name's Emily. I am the joint CEO of Welcome Churches alongside Sue, who's here tonight as well. Hello, Sue.
Hi everyone, really nice to be here with you, and Emily and I jointly lead Welcome Churches, so it's great to be presenting together and talking about our new project together this evening.
Yes, yeah, well, the first part at least might be a bit of a double act, might tip between the two of us, as we share a bit about some of our journey of where we've come so far as Welcome Churches, and to this point of launching a new project, Welcome Homes as well. We don't stand still, do we? And we like to keep dreaming of where we might go next, and the different things that the church can get involved in the UK and be a part of. So yeah, we're really excited to have Welcome Homes to join in with the other projects that we do at Welcome Churches.
Great, it's really nice to see all the different places that you're from. There's a few names that I recognise from churches that are part of our network or people that I've spoken to in the past, so that's great. And someone there from my hometown, that's wonderful. So Emily and I will be leading you through this evening, so really excited to have you all here. So the project Welcome Homes that you've come to learn about this evening is a project of Welcome Churches, and I know that many of you in this webinar are already connected with us in one way or another, but we wanted to start with a brief introduction to Welcome Churches before we go on to speak about Welcome Homes and hear from all sorts of other people this evening around that topic. So the vision of Welcome Churches is no refugee alone, and we want to see every refugee and every person seeking asylum and safety in the UK being welcomed by a local church. And we believe that if every church joined in with this vision, we would easily see our vision of no refugee alone fulfilled. And we work all across the UK with a whole wide range of churches. We do training and equipping for the church to welcome and support refugees and people seeking asylum. We offer online training that's open to anyone, and we have lots of training and resources available for churches in our online network. And our network has around 1,200 churches in it. We've really been thrilled how it's grown over the last 18 months especially. And so all of the churches in the network are committed to welcoming refugees in their area. Some of the churches are really experienced and they've been doing it a long time, and others at the very beginning of their work with refugees. So it is free to join, so do get in touch with us if you think your church might not be part of that network and you'd like them to be. We have people that can chat with you about what it means to join the network and would love to do that. So I am really excited about tonight. Many of us on the Welcome Churches team are involved in our local areas, supporting and welcoming refugees and people seeking asylum in the areas where we live. For me, I've been involved since 2016 with refugees from all kinds of backgrounds in Buckinghamshire and various projects in the wider area too. And in High Wycombe, I'm involved with a local community charity that works with refugees who are facing homelessness or precarious housing. Many of them have just got their refugee status, and that's a very difficult time for people. And we've been finding benevolent local landlords who are willing to rent a house or a flat at a rate that a refugee family who's still trying to find their feet can afford. So in High Wycombe, we've helped 23 families in the last few years, and landlords have stepped forward and wanted to join in with our work by offering their home, and we as a charity have provided wraparound support. And many of these families now feel that High Wycombe is their home. Many of them say we don't really have anywhere else to call home in the UK, and they found friends here. And some have even said, I would never have thought I'd have found friends so quickly and so easily. And others have moved on. Perhaps they found a job in London, or they've moved to be close to relatives or friends that they've made, or certain city that they've wanted to live in. And that's been great. But having a benevolent landlord, getting support in the very beginning has really helped them settle. And for them to be in a position to actually make an informed decision and say, I'd like to choose this for my life, or I'd like to live here. And they've been able to save up a deposit for a next house and been able to understand what it means to move house and to settle in an area in somewhere else in the UK. So I've been thrilled to be part of that in my spare time. And I am a person who really likes new projects of any kind, to be honest. I'm especially excited that we're launching Welcome Homes, because for me, I've already seen how it works, how a model like this works in terms of landlords, and the hugely positive impact that this type of model and support makes on refugee families. So I am excited about all the Welcome Churches projects, but especially this one, because I've seen a type of this project work locally and have been involved in it, and that's really great. So Emily did say we're doing a bit of a double act. So Emily, what are you looking forward to this evening?
Well, one of the great things about Welcome Homes and having the privilege of being able to see it come together is bringing lots of different experts on board and learning from their expertise. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to duplicate what's already happening around the country, but we just want to complement that and add to it as well. So it's been fantastic to be in partnership with lots of different organisations who are committed to helping to house refugees in the UK, and who believe in the power and the potential of churches and Christians to play a significant role in that. It isn't just about one organisation, but it's about mobilising the whole church across the UK, which is really exciting as well. So for those of you who just joined, we're sorry we can't see all your faces this evening, but do write any questions that you have in the chat throughout the evening, as we will be doing our best to answer them as well. So a bit more about who we are for those of you who haven't been involved with Welcome Churches in the past. We started in 2018. That's when we became our own charity, although the vision kind of started much before that. We grew out of a local project in Derby. Anya from Upbeat Communities is on the call tonight, and we were birthed out of Upbeat Communities through the Welcome Boxes project, which is about welcoming new arrivals to a town or a city with the introduction of a gift of a welcome box. And that's a project that's still going strong in Derby and is now going strong across the UK, with many other churches and areas running welcome boxes as well. So that's kind of how we started, and that's still happening. But now Welcome Churches is much more than welcome boxes as well. So Sue, you joined the team in 2018, didn't you? And brought great cross-cultural experience at that time, and training expertise too.
Yeah, definitely. So I joined the year that we became a charity. So it was all very exciting, and joined Emily and Karina. And I was the first person in the south of England. And so we were growing out of the Midlands, and that was really exciting at the time. And a lot has changed since then. In the first couple of years when I joined, we, as Emily said, we grew and developed our training a lot. We added in a lot of resources. We started our trauma awareness training and looking after ourselves as we support others. We also developed welcome holidays we were just looking for ways to enable churches to join in with welcoming refugees wherever you are as a church, wherever you are in the country, and whatever type of church that you are. And the last couple of years especially has seen a lot of growth. Firstly, we were involved with welcoming people arriving from Hong Kong. We did all sorts of new things, including organising friendship festivals, printing a magazine booklet that we gave out in the tens of thousands. So that was all hugely encouraging, and lots of churches joined our network as a result of that. Going on from that, in terms of Hong Kong work, we've also just launched some great well-being videos and videos for Hong Kong teenagers coming to the UK, been a huge variety of all the different things we've been able to join in with. And then in 2021, later on, we supported churches offering support to Afghans who were being housed in what were called bridging hotels all across the UK. And we did a huge amount of training, huge amount of support, helping churches get involved with the people in those hotels and really provide really good support. And a lot of that's still going on. I think we'll hear a bit later on, but there's still around 9,000 Afghans in hotels. So that work also continues. And then, of course, last year, with the Ukrainians coming to the UK at the start of the war and being hosted here in different ways and in people's homes or with families, we've continued to grow again, providing training and support for churches and individuals involved in that. So with each mass migration to the UK, large amounts of one particular nationality coming here, it makes us always review what we offer, what we're offering to churches, whether we're offering enough, do we need to do more, what are the areas where churches are saying these are needs, these are training needs. And we're also looking at what's happening in terms of refugees and in terms of people seeking asylum and what's going on here in the UK, and are there new ways that we can join in and help churches join in as well. We always talk about ourselves, we have lots of words to describe ourselves, but one of them is agile. And we certainly love to brainstorm ideas and hear from the team and see what's happening and seek God as to how we can join in as Welcome churches and be part of the solution to needs of refugees or people seeking asylum, and to churches who welcome them as well. So thinking about just these growing needs and our own responses does lead us quite nicely to speak about trends, things that we're seeing, our new work, of course, why you come today, and ways to join in, ways which you can join in or you can tell people about in terms of Welcome Homes. So I'm going to hand back to Emily, and she's going to explain more about Welcome Homes.
Thanks, Sue. So as many of you will already be aware, housing continues to be a significant and a growing need in the UK. And the majority of refugees experience some sort of homelessness at some point when they're trying to build their lives in the UK as well. So that's really what has led us to launch Welcome Homes tonight, to respond to two significant needs in particular: people who need somewhere to stay for a short time, usually hosted in someone's home, and people who need a long-term housing option at an affordable rate as well. So it's really about connecting compassionate homeowners with refugees who are looking for a home in those two ways. So the first way is about hosting people in your home. We've most obviously seen this in the UK over the last year, with people arriving from Ukraine and being hosted in people's homes. And many of us have hosted or know someone who in our church who has hosted a Ukrainian family in their home, which has been fantastic to see that response. About 130,000 people have come to the UK from Ukraine in the last year, and many of them have been hosted by a local family, which is a huge, huge achievement in regards to asylum-seeking background in the UK. So people who are seeking asylum, once their asylum claim has been processed, and if that claim is rejected, they may be made destitute at that point if they no longer have a right to accommodation that the Home Office provides. And when people are also receive their refugee status, that's another point where people are evicted from their property they're living in and can become homeless. So these are long-term issues which are well known in refugee charities to be points where people can be made homeless. And the second part of Welcome Homes is around offering longer-term housing to refugees. We have seen this most starkly with many of the Afghan families that were evacuated out of Kabul in the summer of 2021, who are still living in hotels to this day. So 18 months later, around 9,000 Afghans are still living in hotels, which is a really desperate situation to be in. A hotel is a great place to go for a few nights whilst you're on holiday, but day in, day out, week in, week out, it can get pretty pretty difficult to live your lives there. And the reality is that there just isn't enough homes for these families who need one, particularly Afghan families that have larger families, larger numbers of children, which means that they need bigger houses than is normal for the UK as well. And we're starting to see this with Ukrainian families as well, as 6-month hosting placements have come to an end. Ukrainian families are struggling to then find somewhere else to live independently from a host. Again, this is a long-term issue, and we see many refugees struggling to find accommodation after gaining their refugee status in the UK as well, after they've gone through the asylum process. The severe lack of available social housing makes it very difficult for many refugees to find a long-term house that they can call their home. One family I know had to move from hotel to hotel each week for about 4 months last year before being given a temporary flat. And that temporary flat they're still living in about 9 months later as well. The need for long-term affordable accommodation is a really big one. So Welcome Homes exists to connect compassionate homeowners with refugees in need of a home. And the two main ways that we're looking for people to join in with that is either by using your spare home in your house and seeing whether you can host a refugee, or if you have a property, whether you can let that out to a refugee family who is in need of a home. If you have a spare room, we want to help connect you with a local hosting organisation who will train and support you to be a host for a refugee or person seeking asylum. As I said, it's all about partnership, and there are many fantastic organisations across the country who really want to get alongside hosts and support them as they provide that home. And then if you have a property, we want to help connect you with refugee tenants, and we want to equip and mobilise and resource you to be a good landlord and ensure that you understand the type of tenants that you'll be receiving as well. So people who are from a different culture and what that might mean, and some of the things that refugees have experienced and what that might mean for their lives in the UK. So we'll help support the refugee tenants for the first few months of the tenancy to help them to settle and make sure they understand what it means to be a good tenant in the UK too. What bills they need to pay, when to put their bins out, what a UK homes heating system is like, those sorts of things. And we'll also offer them a welcome from the local church alongside that, should they want to connect with more people locally. And so we're particularly prioritising families from Afghanistan who are still living in the hotels at this time, as there is such a particular need there. And we really think it's important that properties are available to as long-term as possible and are at affordable rates. So that means being let at local housing allowance rates and ideally to be able to be rented for a few years at least. That will give the refugee tenants the best opportunity to start to rebuild their lives in the UK and feel in control of their lives too. There are so many reasons why we want to do this, and we draw some of our inspiration from this verse in Hebrews, which says, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." So when we stop and think of the impact of that verse and the impact that we can have through offering hospitality through housing, it's phenomenal, isn't it? It's phenomenal to think that we can ultimately be blessed through doing this. It's definitely not a one-way thing. For myself and my husband, we found that offering hospitality has been a huge blessing in our lives. One of the ushers at our wedding last year was someone who had lived with my husband after getting his refugee status when he was potentially going to be made homeless. And they became such good friends that he was an usher at our wedding. And another person who is living in a house that I own, she actually did our wedding cake as well. So yeah, we've had a lot of benefits from being able to offer hospitality, and it's definitely not a one-way thing. And I have learned so much about God's generosity to each of us through the people I have got to know as well. So we're now going to hand over to Sam, who is our head of projects, who's playing a key role in the Welcome Homes initiative. And Sam's going to be joined by Paul, who is from NACOM, who is a really key partner of Welcome Homes, who we're delighted to be working with. So over to you guys.
Thanks, Emily. Yes, Paul is a real expert in the refugee and hosting world, and has worked in it for a number of years, and has been really key in getting the Welcome Homes project up to speed to this point. So Paul, could you just tell us who NACOM is and why you think there is a need for people to host at this time?
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I'm really excited by this initiative. It's really good to be here. I work for NACOM, which is the No Accommodation Network. It was started back in 2006 by the founder of a charity in Manchester called Dave Smith, and the charity was the Barratt's Trust. And Dave gathered together a group of 7 people who were predominantly Christian or church projects that were started to work with people seeking asylum that were left street homeless and destitute. And that network grew and eventually became a charity in its own right in 2015. And I had the privilege of being one of the founder board members. I used to work for one of the Christian charities that was involved with founding NACOM. But I'm now a staff member. I'm a network development worker. So I help charities, churches, projects develop local and national kind of accommodation projects. We are an infrastructure organization. So we're approximately 140 members across the UK. We're in all parts of the UK, Scotland, Wales, England, Northern Ireland. And our full members are all delivering accommodation to people seeking asylum with no recourse. So many of those are hosting projects. So they include small local projects like Upbeat in Derby, who are on the call tonight, right up to sort of national charities such as Refugees at Home, and specialist charities like Hope at Home, which is another Christian charity that works specifically with victims of human trafficking and modern slavery. So hosting's always been at the core of the kind of offer that many NACOM projects provide. And NACOM projects that are involved with hosting, they tend to have a focus on the individual that's claimed asylum in the UK, but has had a negative decision. And what we find is when people are either housed or hosted, is it roughly between 50 and 60% of original negative decisions can be overturned. And it's the basic principle that if you've got your basic needs met of food and accommodation, you're then able to focus on making informed choices for your future. So it's really important to have that safe place that to stay while others are helping you to kind of regularize your immigration status. So there's an ongoing need. Our projects, a few of our projects are involved with Homes for Ukraine. So for example, Refugees at Home are. But many of the other projects, their core focus is people that are already here, that are already street homeless and destitute. And while the Homes for Ukraine project has raised the profile of hosting nationally, many of the established projects are struggling. They're struggling with host recruitment, host retention. And so there's a desperate need for new hosts who are prepared to welcome somebody into their homes. And also, a lot of our members are involved with housing as well. They're involved with providing longer term housing solutions, both for people seeking asylum and newly granted refugees.
Brilliant. I mean, we love the NACOM, the network, and the way you bring very different groups and hosting organizations together and are able to share best practice and help one another. It's a sort of big community across the UK. And Paul, I'm sure you've got hundreds of stories, but I'd love to hear 1 or 2 examples of how hosting, or what difference hosting has made in someone's life. If you could share, that'd be great.
Okay, yes. I mean, my own family have hosted on a number of occasions. So I'm going to tell you the story of a young woman from Pakistan. I'll call her Fatima, it's not her real name. And 10 years ago, she presented at my office at the time in Middlesbrough, very shy, very timid. She was 7 months pregnant. She'd been the victim of honor crime. She just had a negative decision from the Home Office. And she was destitute. The key had been taken off her. She had nowhere to go. She had spent all her life, she'd been under the control of men in her family. She was very, very nervous talking to me, but I managed to kind of ring somebody in the church, a female, came and joined me, and we set up a hosting placement for her, but then she was detained. She was detained pending deportation to Pakistan. And she was she was the only person of a group of 250 women who was removed from the flight, sent back to Darlington, and she came to live with my wife and my 4 daughters. And she arrived, she wanted to know where Mecca was, so we got the compass out. She was a religious Muslim, and she was so surprised that Christians could be so open and be prepared to help her and take her shopping to buy halal food. And she even came to the wedding of the chief executive for Upbeat 3 days after she arrived in our home. But to cut a long story short, she eventually got support from a really good solicitor who did an expert report on the vulnerability of women and girls in Pakistan. She was granted refugee status. My wife was the birthing partner for her and had the privilege of seeing her son born. And 10 years on, she's now living independently in Middlesbrough and working in a local school and doing really, really well. And one of the things to really encourage you about this young lady was she's a religious Muslim, but she once came to our local church and spoke in front of 200 people and to give thanks for the support she'd been given. And she even said publicly, Christian prayers get answered. So this is a woman that still she's a Muslim, but she recognized that there is some power in Christian prayer. And so who knows what will happen, what seeds have been sown in her life. But that's just one example of somebody that was really impacted because a hosting bed was available.
Yeah, well, thank you, Paul. That's an amazing story. And yeah, just to see how involved she was in your life and the life of her hosts, it's really encouraging. I've just noticed there's a question that's come in. That's how can people living in more rural areas where transport links for work or support services are poor help with hosting? I wonder if you had any wisdom on that. That's
a big challenge. It's not impossible. It can be done. I'll be honest that the majority of NACOM projects who are working with people with no recourse tend to be looking for a host in more urban areas, but where transport links and where this can be support with transport costs are available, it can be done. So where I am on Teesside, we had people that were hosting on the edge of the North York Moors National Park, but we had pretty good public transport system here. Other charities such as Refugees at Home that are working with not just people seeking asylum, but newly granted refugees who have the right to work, they can be more flexible. And also Hope at Home, the national charity that works with victims of modern slavery and human trafficking, they are much more flexible in terms of more rural locations. Okay, thank you for that. That's really helpful. And lastly, I just wanted to ask what excites you about Welcome Homes and what we're trying to do as Welcome Churches with this project. I wonder if you could just share. Well, I think what excites me is NACOM as a network was birthed as a Christian response, if you like, in terms of a Christian was gathering people together, and it was very small. And it's been really exciting to see, not in the growth of the network I work with, but to see the wider church is still interested in the plight of the alien, the sojourner, the people that are not like us but are living amongst us, that God calls us to provide hospitality for. And this is kingdom work. What you're doing is kingdom work, and it's really important. So for me, as a Christian working in what is a secular network, this excites me. I like, I love having the opportunity to sort of engage with Christians at a local level, to encourage and to help them to respond, to be equipped to respond. So what you're doing is fantastic, and it's great to be able to kind of partner with you on this journey. And if anybody wants, it has seeds of an idea for a local project, and you need particular help and guidance, then, as I said, 2 of us on the team who do the same role understand the language of local churches, so we're able to kind of help you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Yes, and Paul's the NACOM website has just been posted on the chat, so do have a look at that, and do be in contact with Paul. Thank you so much, Paul, for your wisdom.
Pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Paul really is one of the experts that we've been drawing on for Welcome Homes, and we're really grateful for that at Welcome Churches. It isn't just us, we really want to draw on people who have got years and years of experience, and Paul is one of those people, which is fantastic. So now we're going to hear from Stuart and Anna. So Stuart is part of a project that has really responded more recently than Paul's experience, but recently after the Afghan crisis, to help house Afghans. And so, yeah, it would be really great to hear from Stuart and to hear from his experience in Oxford. So over to Anna and Stuart. Stuart, are you there? Yes, excellent. Just remember to unmute yourself, Stuart, and there you go. Over to you,
Hi,
Anna.
everyone. So my name's Anna, and I'm part of the Welcome Churches team, and I work on the Welcome Homes project, and I'm going to be asking Stuart a couple of questions tonight. Hi, Stuart.
Hi.
Lovely to have you here with us. So first of all, let's start with, why did you want to help Afghan refugees?
So I think I've got a mixture of my own personal motivations and what led our project to want to do something. Emily's already talked about the scriptural basis, so we're challenged to be welcoming to strangers and to aliens. There's also a bit of it for me, which is that in the case of Afghan refugees, often the reason they're fleeing their country and want to come here is because they've been working for the British forces or British aid organisations. So I kind of feel we have a responsibility. It would be shameful if we weren't doing something. There's also a streak in me that likes picking a fight, if you like. If part of British culture is going to be hostile to people from other countries and xenophobic, then I want to challenge that. I want to set a different example. The bit that's to do with our organisation is that we set up Dwell to crowdfund to buy houses in Oxford, which is a really expensive city. The first one was for a church worker. The second one was for a homelessness project. But the leader of our project, his day job is a fundraiser. And when he saw the Afghan airlift last summer, he said, this is the moment we should do something because the public are behind this and it's in the public eye. So there was a kind of cynical, if you like, opportunist part of it as well. It was a good time to do it.
Thanks, Stuart. So tell us a bit more about Dwell Oxford and what you've been doing. So you've housed 2 refugee families now. How did that happen? How did it come about? Who's involved? How long have they been involved? Yeah, just let us know a bit more about that.
So Dwell is essentially 4 people, though we draw in volunteers as well. So somebody who is an older gentleman who's really good on detail and a really good company secretary. We have a good treasurer. I've taken responsibility for the properties part of what we do. And then there's the guy who leads the project and chairs the meetings, who is a fundraiser. The project started because a church in a housing estate in one of the less well-off parts of Oxford wanted to employ a minister, and there was no logical way of being able to afford a house for the minister in a very expensive city. And the model we came up with was crowdfunding. So that's what we've repeated then for a homelessness project and the 2 Afghan families. So we have now housed 2 families. Each of them is mum, dad, and 3 children. We have a really good relationship with the city council. The city had committed to take 10 Afghan families and was looking for partners to provide properties. And the Home Office and the city fund Asylum Welcome to do a lot of the welcoming of the people and helping them register with doctors and get into the benefit system and that kind of thing. So we stuck to what we think we're good at, which is the providing the house and maintaining the house and doing the practical side. When I say crowdfunding, this is not people sending £5 in an envelope or making small donations online. We ran a video appeal in churches with an opportunity to come to an information evening. And I've sent Anna the details of those if anybody wants them. We invited people to lend on the basis of low interest loans. So we were encouraging loans from £5,000 upwards in multiples of 1,000 for 5 or 10 years. And we were offering interest rates of 1%, 2%, or 3%. Most people came in saying they'd like 2%, but there are some at 3%, some at 1%. A small number of people said, we don't need the interest, we want to lend you the money, we eventually want the capital back, but we don't need the interest. And a small number of people said, we want to give you money, but it's a gift, it's not a loan, which obviously helps us. And then the economics work surprisingly well for an expensive city. That the rent that the city initially and now Universal Credit pay us for the houses exceeds the interest we have to pay out each month by about £700. So we have money for insuring the houses, for maintenance of the houses, and to start the fund that will eventually repay the capital. So that's the basis on which it works. If anyone has questions about any of those things, I'd be glad to answer them here or offline. That's where we're at.
Brilliant. So what does the future look like for the housing projects that you run?
So we've set all this up in about 2 years, and it's not been good for our health or our marriages. I think all 4 of us are agreed that we need to have some respite and digestion. So we're not about to rush to do this on a huge scale. The charitable company that we've set up is set up to do future projects using the same model, and it's set up to do them in Oxfordshire or any adjacent county, which I think is 5 counties, but it's not something that will happen in a hurry. We have a lot of goodwill. If people want to learn from what we've done, we're glad to do that, but I think we need to let the model run and demonstrate that it works, and just have everything running smoothly.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's a well-deserved rest, like you said. And then lastly, if there's people on the call at the moment who are considering providing a home for a refugee family or launching a similar project, what kind of advice would you give to them?
So I think we're not the experts of working with refugee families. We've let people who've already got the experience do that. We have had a lot of contact with the families when we're decorating and fixing things and that kind of thing. The hospitality we've been offered is amazing. The technical side, how we funded it, we are very glad to work with people. We're not going to do it for them, but what we've learned the hard way, we're happy to share.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Stuart. And like you said, if people have questions, feel free to send them through to Stuart. I'll pop his email into the chat box.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Anna. It's fantastic to see how you have used the skills of so many people within your community and across the different churches to house these families and to do it in a very creative way. So some people are involved with their skills and others have been able to give financially to help that happen, which is fantastic. Yeah, so really great way of doing that. So yeah, thank you. So we're hoping to give you all a different ways of joining in tonight with welcoming refugees and particularly through housing, as you've hopefully realised by now. And so as Paul has told us a bit more about hosting and Stuart has told us a little bit more about housing and how you can think creatively about that. We're now going to be joined by Rachel, who leads a Starfish project, which is particularly around hosting people from Ukraine as well. So welcome, Rachel. It's really good to have you with us tonight. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Hillsborough in Northern Ireland.
Ah, very good. Great. Well, where I hear Hillsborough, I think Sheffield. So great to clarify that. Great. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Starfish Ukraine project and how it came about?
I can. So Starfish, this time last year, we didn't exist. We're just a group of volunteers who saw a need at the start of the Ukrainian war and responded to that. So I guess in summary, we're just a matching service that helps Ukrainians who are looking for homes find safe homes in the UK. We noticed early on that there was a gap. People wanted to host and they didn't know how to do it. So we've kind of been standing in that gap. Our vision was specifically to place Ukrainians into Christian homes as much as possible and to place them into communities where they would be supported and loved and meet other Ukrainians as the number of Ukrainians increased. So we've developed quite a big support network for both the hosts and the Ukrainians. And we've worked really, really hard to try and match people well so that the placement would work and it wouldn't break down. So most of them have been pretty successful. It came about because of my ministry in Ukraine over the last 20 years. And when the war broke out, I was praying about how I could help. And I was just really challenged when I saw the pictures of the Ukrainians fleeing. So initially, through Christian Contacts, we placed people into the south of Ireland, where there were no visa requirements. But then as Homes for Ukraine opened up, we started to place people into homes in Northern Ireland and then some into Scotland and England as well.
Fantastic. So I imagine that the last 12 months have been quite a whirlwind for you, and probably quite a roller coaster as well. So can you give us a glimpse of what the last 12 months has looked like for you?
I can try. So as I said, this time last year I was working as a vet in small animal practice, but I stopped at the end of March. And then this has really just sort of taken over my life since then. So my family hosted 5 Ukrainians ourselves. So that was one element that was very busy, but it was a really good way to understand what the other hosts were going through and all the difficulties. So it's just been a massively steep learning curve. We've learned about visas and transport and moving people sort of to safe places across Eastern Europe on their way, communicating with the Ukrainians and the hosts, just building a big network of volunteers. We have about 20 people and we're all just volunteers, people who've built websites for us, transported people from airports, things like that. So yeah, it's been quite emotional. We've seen highs and lows. We've supported people through peaks and troughs. We've used our initiative, taken risks, but we've seen God answer prayers in an amazing way. So it's been really worthwhile.
Fantastic. That's great. And I imagine that the needs continue now, even 12 months in. So what does it look like at the moment? What are some of your current needs?
Yeah, I think we all thought this sort of last February it would be over in 6 months, and obviously it's not. So we need more hosts. We have approximately 50 people on our list wanting to come. Somebody else mentioned bigger families, they're harder to host. The people have even bought homes for them here, which has been amazing. So yeah, new placement homes and then moving on homes. So again, people have been really good to give homes at low cost to some of these families, but that's something that we're really trying to work on. And something
so
else
by new placement homes you mean new people arriving in the UK?
Yeah, so we need people that will take new Ukrainians and then people that will help them to move on into independent accommodation.
Yeah, great.
And we need visas to come through. Yeah, because we have homes sitting waiting for some of these families and the visas aren't coming through.
Yeah, so some people are particularly motivated by the Ukrainian war and helping Ukrainian refugees in particular. So this is one way to help specifically Ukrainians, as we heard from Paul, that there are other needs as well with other refugee groups who are in need of hosts. But for those who who are interested in hosting Ukrainians, this is one way of doing that. So it's great to have you part of the Welcome Homes project as well. So what would you say to somebody who is considering hosting a refugee family?
I would say, yeah, it's not going to all be easy, but I think it is really worthwhile. There's a really good biblical mandate for welcoming the stranger. And I think you'll be amazed what a blessing you'll be and how blessed you will be. I would just say go into it with an open mind, be flexible, be prepared to be challenged, take all the help you can get and just explore the options and go for it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Rachel, and well done for all you've done in the last year as well. It's been great to see your journey, and everyone that you've been able to help in the last year has been phenomenal as well. Thank you. So hopefully, as you're seeing tonight, we're giving you lots of different ways of being involved and lots of different ways that different people have been creative in their response to welcoming refugees and providing homes for them. There isn't a one-size-fits-all answer, and there are lots of different ways that you can help to provide that room for somebody or that house for somebody as well. And hopefully some of you, it will be getting your cogs whirring about how could you respond and how could you do something after tonight as well, which will be fantastic. So next we're going to be joined by Sam and Harry. And Harry has another really creative way of responding to refugee housing, which I won't spoil the surprise. I'll let Sam and Harry explain a bit more about. So over to you.
Thanks, Emily. Yes, as you can see from Harry's background, Harry works for Boklok, I think I've pronounced that right, which is a developer of modular housing, which, believe it or not, is what is behind Harry. Harry, you've been in the property sector and working with refugees for a number of years. I wonder if you could just give us a sort of an outline of the situation more broadly, housing in the UK.
Yeah, no problem. Well, as the others have said, thanks so much for having me, guys. It's been amazing hearing from everyone else and their perspectives and what they're doing. And this might seem a little bit, this is probably a bit more long-term, sort of looking at housing in the UK and accommodation for refugees. But I guess a good place to start, as sort of Emily touched on at the beginning, is that housing in the UK is in a really difficult place. And I mean, I can touch on that in just a few points. The government in 2019 pledged to build 300,000 homes a year. and by the mid-2020s. And there have been a lot of reasons why that's been difficult, but that hasn't been a number that we've been able to reach, which means that housing, we're in need of real quality housing. Probably more relevant to families coming over, refugee families coming over, is also our need for really good quality social housing. So social housing in the UK has dropped by about 1.5 million homes since the 1970s. So that's meant that there's been more of a need for temporary accommodation, which where one of the places we're based is in Bristol, and we've seen families in temporary accommodation rise from about 550 in 2018 to over 1,000 now. And so with refugee families coming in as well, that's adding to that number. So it can sound quite bleak, but actually what we're doing, and I'm sure we'll come onto it, but we think that sort of what we're doing and what we're seeing others doing in housing is definitely one of the solutions.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question, but you've really outlined the need there, Harry. So what is modular housing, and how can it make a difference to, say, a refugee family?
Yeah, good question. So this is modular housing, or an example of it. So we, as you said, Sam, English people will call us Boklok in the same way that English people will call IKEA, but you pronounce it Boklok, which is live smart in Swedish. And modular housing, or sort of MMC, is but usually built in a factory. So there's lots of different types of MMC. It stands for modern methods of construction. We build ours in a factory, and then we put it on the back of a lorry and take it to site. And these houses behind me are actually 2 different units. So you've got one on the bottom layer and another one on top. So they're both brought by lorry to site. And why this is really significant is it means that the time it takes to build a site, if all goes to plan, should be reduced by about 40% or 50%. These homes as well are fully timber as well, even though it looks like brick, they're fully timber. So it's just an example of the innovation that's going on in the country. And different European countries are much further ahead than we are. But I think the thing to sort of answer your other question about what's the difference that this can make for refugee families is probably, I'd probably touch on 2 points. Is as I said at the beginning, it's a long game. So whereas the other guests have been talking about things we can do right now, I think this point I'm trying to make is that looking ahead, there is hope. Where I think we can look at housing in the UK and sort of wonder, outside of hosting and temporary accommodation, is there really anything that is going on that can bring hope? And there is. A couple of examples of this that we see in Bristol are something called the Gap House, which is where they're trying to build housing where old council garages are for the homeless. And another one is something called Snug Homes, which is another brilliant initiative in Bristol. And they're building sort of community-led homes. And one that's went up 2 years ago, they've got a refugee in there as well. And so it's just examples of where people are trying to go, how can we innovate with housing, and how can we bring in new solutions to the problem that we see in front of us. But just
awesome.
The second point there was just, I think the speed is really exciting. So we're almost there. It's things are looking brighter, if not absolutely there yet. But to do with housing and this crisis, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and that's really helpful. You're talking about sort of future hope. But I do know that you are also doing a number of projects in the south of England with Boklok. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more, if someone had the means or resources or the interest, what would they do how could they explore modular housing? Is it applicable to anyone?
That's a really good question. Before I was with Boklok, I was with another organisation called the Bristol Housing Festival. obviously they're in Bristol, but I'd really encourage you to visit their website. They're a company who are working with Bristol City Council to try and innovate in many different ways. So from us, which is volumetric, is a lot of houses, right the way down to single houses, and they're working with several churches in Bristol to see if there's a way that those churches can use their land, even with one house. So I'd say visit places like the Housing Festival, who are really trying to start these things, and to work with companies, work with churches, work with councils. I think the lesson probably from them is just showing where there's a will, there's a way. And what they're sort of seeing is often, as we've spoken about, where there can seem like a lack of hope. What they've sort of seen in Bristol is just because something isn't happening doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. Just because we don't see these solutions coming about doesn't mean they can't. And really, through a lot of effort and a lot of prayer, they're starting to see things happen. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I'd say if you're wanting to know more about maybe what you can be doing or your church can be doing in a real sense, the Bristol Housing Festival are a great place to go to.
Thank you, Harry. No, that's really helpful. And yeah, we've posted a number of different websites that should provide even more information, especially on modular housing and costs and sizes. And that's not the only style of housing that you do, is it, Harry?
No, we do apartments as well. And I should say with BookLook, this is more on the development side, and we do a large amount of affordable housing as well. But MMC spans, like I said, from this size of development right along to 1 or 2 houses. So yeah, it's quite exciting.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Harry, and thank you, Sam. It's great to have another example again of a different way to respond. And I know there's been some questions in the chat already about some of the practicalities of that, and some of the ins and outs of how that works. So hopefully we've got some of your cogs whirring tonight, and you're thinking, what does this mean for you in your situation? And there's a poll popped up. Presumably everybody's got a poll that popped up on their screen that we'd love for you to fill in with more, just to kind of get a bit of a snapshot over what you're thinking right now. I don't think it's just for us to gain a snapshot of what people are thinking. This isn't an inquiry form, it doesn't have your details on, but it will just really help us. And the thing with modular housing that I just wanted to say is that some of you will be part of churches that have land that you might be able to use for housing. We all have different starting points, but that is another starting point that some of us might have. And I know that the Church of England in particular are looking at ways of how church land can be used for housing. And so that's something in particular modular housing might be of interest to you. But we've had a whirlwind of an hour. It's been a great evening, hasn't it, Sue?
It's been amazing. And although I knew obviously all the different projects that we're involved with and that we've been speaking to, it's just been great to hear that all over again, and to be just challenged really. How are we each going to join in, and what could we each do? It's just really inspiring. And I'm sure lots of us are kind of cogs whirring and thinking, is it something I'm going to respond to personally with my own home or a house that I own, or would I like to join in with something else, or what could I do, or I wonder what's going on locally? So lots to think about, and hopefully lots of good information with our Welcome Homes and beyond to be thinking about after today.
Definitely. I've just realised that I've said cogs whirring quite a lot tonight. And if there's people with English as a second language joining us tonight, then that might be something that doesn't translate very well. So I'm sorry about that. But it'll be something for you to ask a local friend about, and they'll be able to explain what cogs whirring means to you.
Someone's just written it in the chat, so obviously everyone's got their cogs whirring. It's a thing. So thank you so much for coming. You will get a follow-up email with some more information, and you'll be able to sign up for the Welcome Homes newsletter. So that's a separate sign up. If you're part of our normal Welcome Churches newsletter, you do need to opt into that and sign up for that. It doesn't mean you're definitely going to do something, but it means I'd love to hear what's going on and can continue to consider, or I just want to know, maybe to pass it on to someone else that you know who might be interested. So do think about that too. If you have friends or people that you know, that you could tell them about Welcome Homes and put them in touch with us, and maybe inspire them with something that you found really inspiring this evening, one of the stories or one of our speakers. So please do that, and we'd love to keep in touch with you. We also just can't close without the opportunity to financially give to support us as Welcome Churches. We heard from a number of the project ways to join in financially. Perhaps it's not the practical side of things that you're going to be doing. So please do consider supporting us at Welcome Churches, both for this project and for our wider work. You can either do that via our welcomechurches.org website, or you can go via our Welcome Homes website, welcome-homes.org, and you can find a donate button there. So really appreciate this, or if you want to talk to us about supporting us financially, please do come through to us.
Great. Thank you, everyone. It's really good to be with you tonight. Have a good evening.
Thanks for joining us.